Hi, everybody. Welcome to our October virtual tasting for the Forgotten Grapes Wine Club. So excited for those of you who are joining us. We have a very special guest, a new friend of mine, somebody who I met earlier this year at a wine tasting here in Paso Robles. And when I found out she was a German importer, a light bulb went off that would be our first chance to do international wines in our club. Having the person who knows these wines best in the same time zone is going to be a great help to us. So excited to have Lisa here with us. Before we begin, as always, we're going to have everybody muted except for Lisa and I. So if you have any questions, throw them into the chat. We'll be happy to ask them over the course of the conversation. As you may see, once again, Allison not with us. This time she is in Georgia, the Republic of, not the state of, shockingly. So she's hopefully enjoying some saperavi and ricotta and those awesome little like bread cheese boats that the Georgians are known for. But she'll give us a full report on what Georgian food and wine is like when she comes back next month. So, all right. So without further ado, let me introduce our very special guest, Lisa Tupetz of Tupetz Wine Connection. Lisa, thank you for being here. You can unmute yourself.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yes, I know you had some challenges to get to us. There's a little bit of a power outage where you live today, so thank you for making the effort.
Yeah, at my friend's place now, so.
Perfect. And it's very soft lighting, so it works well for you. And we always start off by asking our guest what the most memorable bottle of wine you've ever opened is.
That's definitely a fairly easy answer. I used to live in New Zealand. I went to New Zealand right after school from Germany to New Zealand, and I worked at this really amazing wine bar and restaurant. And I was trained by one of the sommeliers, French sommelier. He did like a really good job. And so I was like doing like the typical thing from going from like a sweet wine where you learn about wine and then go into more drier versions. And a few weeks in, they asked me if I want to, choose a glass of wine from by the glass list. And I was like, oh, sure. So I chose this one Sauvignon Blanc. It's like barrel aged, really nice, creamy texture. And like a single vineyard block. And Lisa, who owns the wine bar and restaurant, she looked at me, she's like, oh, that's great. It's like the most expensive one that we have by the glass. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I felt like horrible that I chose like the expensive wine. And she's like, no, it's great. It shows us that you learned something in the last few weeks.
True.
And until today, this is just, I think just like the whole idea of me, so when I started wine, like being in the wine industry was like, back then in New Zealand. So for me, that was the first time I actually chose a wine that I thought was complex. And even until today, this is one of my favorite wines. I went back to New Zealand last year in October and I found an older vintage on a wine list and I was like, I gotta buy this one. And it was still amazing. So
nice. And who's the producer? Who is the producer of that?
It's called Dock Point. You can find some of his wines over here, but not this particular one. So that's why I have to go back every now and then if I want a bottle.
So how did a young woman from Germany end up not only in New Zealand, but then in the central coast of California?
New Zealand happened because I wanted to learn English. So that was one of the main reasons for me after graduating from high school. So I went to New Zealand and lived with my mom's best friend in Christchurch and learned all about wine and decided to go back to Germany to study winemaking. And then after my time in Germany, I felt like I wanted to go back into winemaking. So I studied winemaking in Germany, the bachelor's and master's degree, worked as a sommelier at certain places, and then worked in distribution for Italian and Spanish wine. So I had like this whole overview about the wine industry in Europe pretty much. And then I really wanted to go back into winemaking. And my sister moved to the United States in 2017. And so I went to visit her in 2018 in May and got to meet one of her really good friends. And I was like, I really want to work harvest in California. That was one of my dreams that I always had. I don't know why, where it was coming from. I was like, one day I will make wine in California. And so I told my sister's friend, and she's like, oh, my brother-in-law works at a winery in Slough. And I was like, never heard about Slough, but sure, give it a try. So I applied for the internship because at this point I wanted to get my foot back into winemaking. And I had a few years break because I was working distribution. And I got the internship I quit my job in Germany because my boss was like, well, you're too young to take a sabbatical. You can't just leave for 3 months and come back. So I was like, cool. Well, then I got to quit, unfortunately. And then, yeah, moved over here for 3.5 months. And it's been now 5 years. So
Wow.
kind of changed plans a little bit. So, yeah.
That's amazing. So was wine something that you always wanted to pursue? Is it a business that you always wanted to be in? Or was it, you know, while you were over in New Zealand that it kind of, you got the bug, or when did it happen for you?
Yeah, definitely happened in New Zealand. So I graduated from school in Germany, and then I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. I always liked chemistry, so I always was into chemistry. And then I also was interested in going to business school. My dad had his own business in Germany, a restaurant as well. So, and he's a trained chef and everything. So I always was involved in the whole culinary side. And I was like, it's kind of interesting. Maybe I should go into this field as well. And so I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. And then I went to New Zealand the plan was 3 months, and ended up being a whole year as well. So it might be a thing. And then I stayed there for the entire year in New Zealand and learned so much about wine and winemaking that I was like, well, this is such a cool combination of chemistry and then also business and its own like art, because winemaking is so much more than, I mean, it depends on what type of wine you're making, but technically it's like a combination of all the things that I was interested in. And then especially I was also like the wine and food pairing aspect of it as well.
Yeah.
So I was just hooked. It was like this 1 year in New Zealand. I kept calling my parents like, changed my flight. I'll be back home later. And so yeah, it's been really fun. So that's kind of how it all started. And then I came back to Germany after this year in New Zealand. It was definitely life-changing. And then studied winemaking.
Nice. So you've made wine in Germany, you've made wine in New Zealand, you've made wine in California. Take us through the differences in those 3 places. Obviously, climatologically, there's a lot of difference, but in terms of the winemaking culture, are there major differences that you see in between, or are there pretty much common threads that run through all 3 of them?
They're definitely, I mean, it depends on the size of winery you work at. I also did a small harvest in Spain in Priorat, which was beautiful too in 2017.
Oh, nice.
It's like a couple of weeks, just took some time off work to see how the wineries work in Spain. I think it definitely depends on the size of winery you're working at. In New Zealand, where I started with winemaking, I worked as a really, really small producer. He was the pioneer of winemaking for Pinot Noir. And so working with him and like it's really small scale, very traditional winemaking techniques, having a small estate vineyard as well, it was really interesting to taste the grapes, see if they're ripe, and you smell the ferments right after, so you can kind of like see differences within the vineyard as well, where the grapes are from, how they show differently during fermentation, and then also if there's a Pinot block similar next to the Chardonnay block, even those two, because they were in the same area on the vineyard, they had similar aromatics too. Mm-hmm. So it was really interesting. I was like, for me, just like one of the most mind-blowing things at this point too.
I can imagine. Wow.
How amazing it is to smell wine and taste wine and make blends and everything. And then in Germany, I work at a slightly bigger producer, still family owned though, so I usually went for family owned producers that I worked with. And so Germany has different laws than American wine regulations. So depending on the country you're in, you have different wine laws and requirements that you have to follow. Europe has its own bigger law that's covering all of Europe, and then every country has its own laws too, but you cannot go less strict than the European law requires you to make wine. And then so within Europe, you have different wine growing zones, zone A and zone B, and most of Germany is in zone A. We're allowed to add sugar to the juice of when you make the wine. And you cannot add acid. So what you can do in America, you can add acid and water. That's something you cannot do in most of Germany. So there's different requirements and laws you have to be aware of when you make wine. At least I worked for someone, so they would tell me what I'm allowed to do and not to do.
They hand you a big handbook on day one and say, memorize this.
Yeah, but it's definitely interesting because it all makes so much sense. It's based on the climate that you're working in and where the winery is located, that the laws are based on the climate and where you're at. So it makes total sense. So making wine over here, I worked for a bigger winery, Chamazal Vineyards here in San Luis Obispo. Mm-hmm. It was a great experience as well. I made wine there in 2018, 19, and 20. So 3 harvests with them. And that's a bigger winery, but still we would make bigger scale SKUs for grocery stores, but then also really high-end single vineyard wines and great Pinot Noir and Syrah. So I learned like so much working there, from small scale winemaking up to bigger scale winemaking. Yeah. So that was really cool as well to see. And now I'm making wine with my friend who has a really small winery again, which is almost, I told her as well, it's like almost annoying and frustrating because it's such a small space.
Sure.
That you have to move things around the entire day until you actually start working. But it's fun.
It's like a movie set, I imagine. It's like half your day is spent moving things before you can actually do the production itself.
Yeah. And then you got to move back everything back inside.
Yeah, and then wash it down, clean it, sanitize it because you've touched it, and
absolutely, yeah.
Wash, rinse, repeat. Literally, wash, rinse, repeat.
But for most part, winemaking is pretty similar in every country. It's more about the philosophy of the winemaker you work with, or your own style and what you want to achieve, and the fruit you're working with, and so it's definitely very interesting to see all different aspects, because depending on the size, you have different techniques and different equipment, and so sometimes you have ideas that you want to do, but it just wouldn't work because just no space for it, or the other way around, maybe no money, to buy certain equipments that are nice and fancy, you would love to have, but then you got to find a way around it. So
yep, that is true. Money is the most important tool when it comes to making wine, unfortunately. You've got a facility. For sure. So for those that are drinking along, we're going to start with the Werther Windisch Dosage Zero Silvaner Sparkling, so you can drink along. But before we get to the wine itself, I wanted to ask you a little bit about the distribution business that you started up and how you got into that. You mentioned, you spent 3 years doing harvest here. So at one point, did you make the decision to transition over to distribution, and that there was this niche, this need for great small production German wines here in California?
Yeah, so I had definitely several reasons for me to look into the wine import business. One of the main reasons for me was that the pandemic started, and I've been talking to my friends back in Germany who all own their own family wineries. And so I was kind of, checking in with them, seeing how they were doing. And they've been struggling. It was definitely a hard time in Europe as well, especially because they have a different setup for distribution than they have over here in America. German wineries don't have a wine club set up usually. And then they sell a lot of wines to direct to consumer in like doing small wine fests in the villages where their winery is located. Or then they sell wines to a lot of restaurants in the area. So there definitely was a big sales drop for all these wineries in Germany. Yeah. And then in 2020, I got injured at work, unfortunately. I torn my labrum in my shoulder, so I had surgery end of 2020. And so I was sitting at home recovering from the surgery, and I wasn't quite sure if I would be able to go back to winemaking, or even if, I didn't know when, because it was a pretty major surgery. And then, winemaking is pretty physical. And yes, I decided to look further into what I would need it if I want to import my own wines. And then for me, it was important that I'm the one who imports the wines myself. So I wanted to be the one who makes decisions on the importing side and choose the wines that I want to work with, and then also able to sell wines directly to the consumer. Because I like tonight, I really enjoy talking about the wines in person to someone, in person. Yes. As much as possible. And
it's the residuals of the pandemic.
Yeah. Kind of nice. And then so that I'm the one who chooses the wines, and I want to be able to explain the wines too if a customer is interested in them. And so for me, I looked in the licensing, and there's actually an option to sell wines directly to consumer if you're an importer, if you have the license for it, and you do it all online. So online tastings is one way for me to sell my wines, and then also my wine club that I have and my online shop. And that's kind of how it was important to me that I was able to do this, like the direct to consumer aspect for me. Yeah. And so I got my licenses ready, applied for everything. I flew to Germany in 2021 to taste some of the wines. I talked to the wineries that I wanted to work with, and to figure out if they want to give it a try and see if we can get some more wines into California. What also was important to me, what I learned while I was injured, I was kind of craving Riesling for some reason. So I went to local wine shops and they had Riesling for sure. But for the most part, you see the same producers over and over. So no one is really looking into, I mean, there are probably in bigger cities as well, but especially here in San Luis Obispo, it was really hard for me to find more unique wines from smaller producers, someone that you don't really find everywhere.
Yeah.
And so I really thought that it's kind of like a niche that I wanted to, get into. And so I went ahead and did it. I flew to Germany, tasted the wines, and got my first shipment in April 2022. So it's been just over a year now.
Nice. So small sample size, only being open a little over a year, or whatever it is, nearly 18 months now.
Yeah.
But what have you discovered anything about the California palate towards German wines or interest in German wines? Are you working primarily or finding consumers are familiar with these wines, or are they unfamiliar, interested in trying them out? What's your market research been so far?
So it's definitely a huge variation from German Riesling is always sweet to someone who definitely loves German wines, then to like winemakers are really curious to taste new wines as well. So it's a big picture, pretty much. I have to educate about German wines aren't always sweet. My whole portfolio is dry, so I always talk about dry wines. And then I just like think everyone is like really curious, especially about grape varieties that you don't see over here. And Riesling is definitely one of my top sellers, but not necessarily the only one. So I have really interesting like Silvaner, the sparkling one we're having right now, or Elbling, a Portugieser. And then for Pinot Noir, we're the third biggest producer for Pinot Noir in the world, and no one really knows about it. So it's a lot of education and just, bringing the message out there and talking about German wines and what we do. But the reception overall has been actually extremely great. People are interested in tasting the wines. They like the dry wines. They're really happy with how dry they are.
Yeah.
And then I think the price point is pretty interesting as well. I think German wines aren't that expensive. So it's definitely, I was shocked when I moved here and I was like, wow, these wines are expensive. So
yeah, we'll charge a pretty penny for our wines if we can here in California.
Yeah, so I'm like, cool. Gotta work really hard to buy some wines here.
Exactly. Well, the nice thing is, you've got a real niche, and obviously there's not a lot of German varietals that are grown in California. You can find a little bit of Blaufränkisch here and there, some Silvaner, but for the most part, it seems like outside of Riesling, Gewürztraminer, you're not going to find a lot of the German grapes out there. So you've got sure. That might be part of the the reason why Californians aren't as up on German wines is because there isn't that one-to-one like, oh, Cabernet from France, Cabernet from California, Tempranillo from Spain, Tempranillo from California, where they have that basis of knowledge to go with.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think especially if you don't know that Germany is a wine country and you don't know that you want to drink a German wine and don't know what you're looking for, then how would you find a German wine on the internet? Exactly. So that's definitely a big reason. But so far it's been good. Social media helps.
It does. And then, it's as the Germans always love to do, and no offense to you and your people, but, they're my people too. But, Germans love order. They love their rankings and their compartmentalization. So I think the, Qualitätswein and the classifications they have really throws a lot of people off. And German words can be intimidating. Umlauts terrify people.
I know. So that's why I try to have English back labels. Every wine has its QR code now too. So you get straight to a website where the wine has a description on it. So you can read about the wines too. And then, so for the most part, actually, Germany is moving away from the traditional Pradikat system where you have the wines organized based on the sugar content of the juice when you harvest the grapes. So they're moving away from this to make it easier for the consumer, even for Germans. If you speak German, you don't know what it means. When I moved back from New Zealand to Germany and I had wine law at school, I was just completely like, okay, I have no idea what you're talking about. Because I just didn't learn about it in New Zealand. I learned, about winemaking in New Zealand and food and wine pairing, but not about the German wine laws. And so, yeah, they're definitely moving away from it. Most of the wineries I work with have it now organized by estate wines, which is like the entry level, like the base wine, the fun drinking wines.
Yeah.
That are sourced from grapes that they own, like estate-owned grapes. And then the second tier is a village wine, like a village, like they do in France. And then they go to the single vineyard Grand Cru, technically, wines for like the top tier wines. So it's like more like a quality pyramid now with like 3-tier system, which makes it a little bit easier for the consumer. And they usually have like different label shapes too, and different bottle shapes. So you can like understand much easier when you look at the bottle what you're getting.
Well, it's good to know. It's nice to know that the German wine regulators are moving to more consumer friendly, because I know that was always an off-putting when I had my own wine shop and introduced people to German wines. That was always a bit of a put-offing situation for them, with just all the names and the listings and the Trockenbeer and Ausleses and whatnot.
I mean, you can still do it, and you're still allowed to do all these things,
sure.
but you're also allowed to use different classifications and make your own tier system. But because now more and more are doing it, it's easier for the whole of German producers to actually get this path, to go this path and make it more obvious for the consumer. But then, I still have wineries that still produce a cabinet, which is one of my favorite wine styles for Riesling, just like slightly off dry usually, unless it says differently on the label, but it's like this perfect balance of low alcohol, a little bit of RS, and then really good acidity too. It's like almost like for hot days like we have right now in California.
Yes.
The perfect drink for after work. So it's amazing.
Beautiful. So how do you find the wineries that you're working with? Are these wineries that you're already familiar with? You know the owners, you've talked with them, or do you have folks over there who you know in the business who make recommendations for you? Are you looking region to region for different varietals? How did you create your portfolio, and how do you come up with the wines to fill your portfolio?
So I started with 6 wineries that I studied winemaking with. So the winemakers and I were really good friends back in Germany, studying winemaking together. And so for me, it was really interesting and fascinating to see how they all started to take over their family businesses from their parents, for example. Mm-hmm. And so I was kind of involved, and I could see like the whole story, how everything developed and how they started to get their own philosophy of winemaking involved into their own winemaking styles, and kind of moving away from what their parents were doing and creating their own business and style, and actually really successful as well. So when I decided to look into my business and importing wines, I reached out to them asking if they would be interested in working with me. So obviously, as a new business, you kind of need to have partners that you can rely on, and
that are familiar with you. They're willing to give you the benefit of the doubt.
Definitely makes it easier to work with someone who knows you. They trust you. And so I was a combination of producers that I either studied winemaking with or worked for when I was back in Germany, or met while living in Germany. So there was one producer, Bettina Schumann, I met at the Pinot Noir trade show in Germany, and her Pinot was, to me, the most outstanding one. Yeah. And so I've stayed in touch with her and had a wine several times living in Germany. And then so I reached out to her as well, asking if she would be interested in working with me and giving this whole business a try. So she was in as well. So it's definitely a combination of knowing people, but at the same time, I also chose those wineries where I know how they work. So when I think about winemaking, and to me, what's important to me right now is to know where the product is coming from, if it's sustainable, if it's farmed in like a way that at least protects the land. Most of the wineries I work with now are organically certified as well, or work biodynamically. Yeah. And then, so that's important to me, that it's like family-owned businesses, organic, and definitely with a sustainable aspect to the whole production side. Because I think, they all have, families as well and children. And it's just like, I think these days really important to go that way. And so if I would make wine, this is what I would choose. So they make wine the way that I would make my wine too. And this is one of the most important criteria for me to work with them.
Do you find that the organic certification, the sustainability model is it taken hold in Germany? Is it kind of in its infancy? Is it something you're seeing more and more producers leaning into? What's happening over there?
It's definitely a big movement. Not necessarily the organic certification. Some of them are already certified like for many, many years, but also cost money. And so some of the smaller ones say, I work organically and I will tell you all about it, how I work, but I cannot afford the certification. That's always one way to look at things too. So it's always important to know the producer and maybe be able to talk to them and see what actually the story is behind the product. And then some wineries, if you talk to them, are certified for many, many years. They say, actually, it should be the other way around, that those who are organic shouldn't pay, but those who are not should pay. Okay. So it's kind of interesting. So I do like this, thought process as well, because they're doing something good and they want everyone to do something good. So
yeah, there should be almost a non-organic tax.
Yeah. So it's definitely a big part now of German winemaking. And nice. Definitely as well, like the low intervention wines, all my wines are technically vegan. So it's about the additives that you can use to make wine. So you can either use plant-based ones or just make low intervention wines, what most of my winemakers work with. So they're not necessarily natural wines, but low intervention wines, which is a combination of taking really good care of the vineyards and the vines you own, and then make wine in a traditional way, being really, really careful about the quality of the fruit, and then pay a lot of attention to what's happening in the cellar. So you can make an unfiltered wine that's extremely clean and tastes delicious. It doesn't have to be, bad.
Right, exactly.
Or get cloudy or anything. There's so many different ways of natural wines these days out there. So yeah, it's all about definition and how you, like, which style you kind of prefer as a natural wine drinker, for example.
Yeah, I've become very, very familiar with isinglass, the vegan filtration fining agent that they're using for my sparkling wine brand that I'm doing. Excellent. Were you able? I mean, I've seen your portfolio, so I know you were able, with the wineries that you kind of started with and have expanded to, have a nice broad range, not only of varietals, but the different wine growing regions in Germany. Are there any regions that you're really focusing on now or that you want to add to your portfolio?
Yeah, so I'm trying to constantly add new wines as well. So at the moment I have about, I want to say 40 wines right now. So what's really important, what I want to do is I have right now 7 different wineries, and I have about 3 to 6 different wines of each winery, so that you get the whole idea. If you ever want to do a tasting of all of like a full wine tasting of one winery, you are able to do this because I have several wines of each producer, and not just one of the entry-level wines and one of the expensive ones. So I want to have like a whole range of the portfolio of the producers. And so I'm not necessarily looking into certain regions. It's, to me, more about the producer itself. For example, I've been talking to another winery this past Monday, and I would really like to work with them, but they're from the same region that the sparkling wine is from. So he asked me if that's an issue for me. And I was like, well, honestly, if I compare you two and your philosophies are aligned, like they're both organic and organic certified, they have worked biodynamically as well in the vineyard, but then they're so different. There's like a whole different brand, a whole different company. So I think it's more about the product itself, and then how the product tastes and what they do within their own small microclimate where they're from, rather than just talking about a region. So if I tell you that this one is from Rheinhessen, you don't even know where it's from, most likely. Right. So, you wouldn't really look for a Rheinhessen wine. And even if you do, like similar to over here, Central Coast, if you're doing passer wines versus slow wines, they're so different. So I think it's more about the winery itself and the winemaker and what the brand is about, rather than the region that's from.
Nice. Well, that's a nice segue, since you were mentioning the Rheinhessen, to talk a little bit about Werther Windisch, which we're drinking their wonderful Silvaner. This is, a Sekt wine in Germany, which is their term for sparkling wine. Which there's a long tradition of sparkling wine in Germany, but I think it's something that not a lot of American folks are familiar with. We've gotten to know, obviously, champagne, Proseccos and Cavas have become popular recently, but you don't hear a lot of people talking about the Sekt wines in Germany. Is there a reason for that? Because they're done in the same style and quite delicious.
Yeah. So This one in particular is made in traditional champagne method. You cannot call it champagne if it's made outside of the Champagne region. I think it's like one of the facts if you drink champagne in California. Similar to New Zealand, everyone is talking about champagne, even though it was not.
I think there are a couple of wineries that still are allowed, like, to have, they have grandfathered in the word California champagne. I think Corbell's still allowed to use it. I know Wilson Creek, which makes the almond champagne, uses it, but probably to their own detriment. So
there you go. I didn't know that. Yeah. So all the sparkling wines that I import from Germany are made in a traditional method, except for one. I have one pet nut as well. And so this one is a 2016 vintage. So what is nice as well is that all the wines that I get are vintage champagnes for the most part. I want to say champagne too, sparkling wines.
Yeah. we know what you meant.
And then so this one that we're just drinking right now has been just gorged just in March this year. So it's been actually aging on lees for the last since 2016, so last 6 years. 7 years. Where are we? Yeah.
A while.
Yeah, a while. And then I got shipped over here in May. I think I got these bottles. So it's nice to get really, nice bottle aging on the wines. And then the price point on these wines, because they're made in like this traditional method, is just, I think, outstanding quality wise. It's really, really unique for Germans. I think the German climate works really well for sparkling wine as well. We have the cooler climate, so the ripening season just gives like so much extract and tension to the wines. And then if you harvest them early to keep the natural acidity in the grapes as well, and then age them for so long, we make outstanding sparkling wines for a long, long time, like over, I think, I don't know how many years, but I think one of the producers that I work with now actually having my next order that comes in November, he's one of the #1 sparkling wine houses in Germany. So I'm just really excited to have him in my portfolio now too, just in time for the holidays. Yeah, I will have a sparkling wine.
Are most of the German sects vintage dated, or are they doing the non-vintage like Champagne does, and even a lot of the Cremants and Cavas you find don't have the vintage dating on them?
Yeah, at least the wineries I work with, they all have vintage on them because that's what their philosophy is and what they want to do. The one that I just started importing, he has one that it's made in a champagne style where you have several vintages added. Yeah, so it's like a really interesting wine too. It's like incredible. But yeah, those are the ones that I'm getting as of now, all vintage sparkling wines, vintage Sekt. Yeah.
And is Sekt something that's produced all throughout Germany, or are there certain growing regions that really specialize in it? This one's obviously from the Rheinhessen, but they're using the Silvaner grape. I know, Spatburgunder, Pinot Noir, a big grape in there. I don't know if that's a big one used for Sekt. There's not a lot of Chardonnay grown in Germany, if I'm not mistaken, because of the coolness. But what are they typically producing Sekt wines from?
So really famous is Riesling. Riesling Sekt is really, really famous, and then we have amazing Pinot Blanc. Also then Pinot Noir, like Blanc de Noir. Some of them add some more aromatic white grapes as well, just to give it more freshness. But for the most part, as far as I'm working with, are all single variety sparkling wines. And then every winery I work with, except for 2, are making their own sparkling wines as well. So it's definitely a thing. But if you look around the American market, it's really, really hard to find German sparkling wine. Yeah. One of the main reasons is that Germans prefer to drink their own sparkling wine. We barely export any of our wines that we produce.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, so I'm pretty lucky that I can get some Sekt for myself over here. But another reason as well why it's pretty difficult to import sparkling wines, it's because the label regulations are pretty difficult. So if you want to have the labels ready for the TTB to get approved, so every product that you import has to have its own label that has been approved by the TTB before it's allowed to be imported. And so especially for sparkling wine, smaller producers, they bottle a sparkling wine and then label at the same time. So they're already labeled. And if the label has something on the back label that says organically certified, that would be illegal for me to import, because there are different regulations for organically farmed wines and certifications in Europe versus America. Or what's important, if it says a grape variety on the label, it has to state that it's a sparkling wine as well, right next to it. And so there's not really many German sparkling wines that say in English sparkling wine.
Right.
So yeah, it's definitely been tricky to get sparkling wine labels approved. It's probably one reason as well why it's kind of hard to find German sparkling wines on the market. But I'll work on that. So I have a sparkling wine club as well, with just German sparkling wines.
Oh, nice. Yeah, and I know all American labels have to have the government warning on the back, which the European labels do not. So that's a whole other consideration to get on them. So yeah, I guess it's the challenge of asking your producers to set aside a certain amount of their wines that they're not labeling. Yeah. And you're just doing like the front label on it, and then the back label is you put that on when you're back here.
So that's definitely nice now that I get a little bit more into the business. I understand more how the market works and have a better understanding of how much wine I need. So now I'm able to talk to the wineries and make some pre-orders and ask them to set aside some wines for me. And then what I did this year too, I went to the biggest trade show, like the Pro Wine, it's called. It happens once a year in Germany. It's like the biggest international wine trade show.
Is it Dusseldorf that it's in? Or
yeah. And so I used to go every year. It was always like a 3-day party as well, but also really, really great.
I've been trying to get there myself one of these days.
You should. It's fun.
All right. Well, I'll have to go sometime.
Definitely really, really cool show and experience and networking opportunities. And so I finally made it back there this year in March for those 3 days. And so that's always a good way as well to taste the new vintages or some older ones and make decisions on, who you want to work with. So I have a few new producers that I tasted there that I kind of liked. And then, you can taste and make a decision as well about some of the wines and quantities, what is good too.
Nice. Excellent. So this is 100% Silvaner. Kind of what's the history of the Silvaner grape in Germany? Is it fairly common? I know here in California, there's just little pockets of it. The one that I remember is, oh God, I'm blanking on their name right now.
Union Sacre makes them.
Who was it?
Union Sacre.
Union Sacre does, but then I used to sell a still at my old wine shop. I used to sell a still Silvaner from their in Santa Maria, kind of in the hills up there. And I will remember the name in a little bit when it's least opportune. But it's definitely, not a grape that most people in California are familiar with. Is it pretty common in Germany? Or I know, very high acid, real bright, but super aromatic, a lot of lemon, lime kind of flavors to it and aromas.
Yeah, so next to Riesling, Silvaner is one of the main varieties that we produce in Germany. So Riesling and Silvaner are usually the top 2 white wines that are produced, like the famous ones for like a similar style. So I have my single vineyard wines that I have right now are either Silvaner or Riesling. But then depending on the region you're in, you also find amazing Chardonnays, really powerful, some of oak as well. And then Pinot Gris is definitely a main variety down in Baden, Kaiserstuhl area, so down south. They make more, Pinot Gris and Pinot Blanc. But it's, very different styles to what you think about Pinot Gris coming from Italy, like a Pinot Grigio or something. So definitely
Grauburgunder, right? Is that what the Pinot Gris is? Yes. Yeah. And then Weissburgunder is the Pinot Blanc.
Yes, and then Spatburgunder is Pinot Noir.
Yes, which we'll talk about with the rosé.
Yeah. So definitely Silvaner is, in my opinion, one of the best ones too, next to Riesling. I think it's a great variety that shows so much of its terroir as well, where it's from. Similar to Riesling, so you get really dominant, really powerful wines, and they're beautiful, or it's just like some easy drinking ones as well, depending on the age of the wine. So it's a really diverse, great variety as well.
Excellent. And as you mentioned, this is, the Methode Traditionnelle, Methode Champenois for this. Do you know how long it's under tirage? And this is zero dosage. So while they're adding yeast for the secondary, they're not adding any additional sugar into this. Is there a reason for that?
So you have to add a little bit of sugar for the, otherwise the yeast would have nothing to eat. You make like the blend of yeast and sugar and add it to the bottle, and then you cone cap it and then let it age. So this one has been aged since 2017. So usually once it's dry, it goes into bottle pretty much, right afterwards.
Okay.
But it's like not an extended time in a bottle, in barrel. So it's usually been, put into bottle right after it's been dry. And then, aged for that long. And then it's more about, he never actually made a non-dosage zero wine. So there's always been zero dosage for him. And it's a style question as well. And just because Silvaner has so much texture, it's totally doable. It doesn't need any other help by, adding a little bit of tirage to it.
Got it. So it's more like no residual sugar on this, that the sugar they're adding for the tirage is almost exactly what the yeast need and will be completely consumed and none will be left behind.
Yeah. So there's no dosage at the end to adjust the sugar.
Excellent. So we're always, and it sounds like this is right up your alley, we're always talking about food pairings with our wines. So, I know with sparkling wines, I have like 3 or 4 sort of go-to items, but I would love to hear some of your best recommended food pairings with this sparkling Silvaner.
My favorite is probably lobster roll. I love lobster.
Oh, wow. Oh, expensive taste.
And
good thing we're not dating.
I love seafood. Yeah. Seafood is always amazing. I think with these wines, I actually had some trout earlier for dinner, so I was like, this would have worked pretty well as well with this wine. So a little bit like maybe like even like an oilier fish too, like a salmon would work too, like smoked salmon, smoked trout, and then also lobster roll or something. Because it has like freshness but still enough palate, so it definitely works really nicely and balance it out perfectly.
Yeah, for me, sparkling wine is 3 primary things. It's potato chips, it's oysters, and it's fried chicken. Like
what?
Fried chicken.
Oh. Okay.
Fried chicken and sparkling wine is next time you're in North Carolina visiting your sister, go get some good fried chicken and open a bottle of sparkling wine. It will blow your freaking mind.
Maybe. So what we do in Germany is actually currywurst and champagne or sparkling. Okay. So if you go to Berlin, there are quite a few currywurst places. I don't know if you know currywurst, but it's
I've not had one, but I have been pre-warned.
It's really good. So it's pretty much a sausage, like a typical German bratwurst, and then the sauce is you probably could call this like a curry ketchup, but then usually the sauce is made from scratch. When I make it from scratch, I use onions and bell peppers, some tomato sauce, and then you add some cumin and some curry powder, some garlic as well, and then orange juice to freshen it up, and then you kind of reduce it, and then you put it over the sausage, and then drink some nice sparkling wine with it. So what would be the German take on having a German Sekt?
Yes, so that's going to be your test for all of these. We're going to come up with a traditional German dish that pairs with each of these. So you're going to have to match that. I've heard that the Germans love the currywurst in the same way that like Australians love Vegemite and people from Chicago love Jepson's Malort. It's one of those acquired taste type of things. But,
I think it's amazing though. I make it for every wine tasting.
Australians think Vegemite is or Marmite is amazing. So everybody has their own palate.
It's like a whole meal. You can't just eat like a whole package of Vegemite.
Well, no, you shouldn't.
This is like a full dish.
You shouldn't eat any package of Vegemite. But you lived in New Zealand, so you probably acquired a taste. So. By the way, I can no longer, you might appreciate this, I can no longer hear people with the New Zealand accent without thinking of somebody explaining the New Zealand accent to me, which is they're basically speaking Australian, but through a really wide smile. So it's the New Zealand mate with the E's and they also can't pronounce the short E, which I find interesting. Like, oh, that's amazing. Anyway, I watched too much Below Deck. That's another point. So excellent. Let's move on to the next wine, which is the Margarethenhof. That's a lot of words. Love the Germans with their not afraid to stretch a word out. But the Elbling, an amazing grape. I know when I tasted this with you the first time. It's the first time I'd ever had an Elbling before, and it really kind of knocked my socks off. It's so interesting, so unique. So take us through this varietal, because I think most people are not familiar with it.
Yeah, so Elbling is one of the oldest known grape varieties out there. It's about 2,000 years old, and it's when it's brought to Europe or to Germany. And it's also called Vitis alba, which means the white grape. And so this has been around for 2,000 years and has been planted all over Germany for the longest time, and then almost vanished completely from the market because taste shifted and just kind of got bored of it, and like the hype was over. But there's one area close to Luxembourg, on the border to Luxembourg in Germany, Mosel and also Obermosel it's called. They still make Elbling. So there are quite a few producers over there who make Elbling. And I think it's just like, if you look at the grapes, they're pretty huge clusters, and they produce quite a lot of grapes and juice, like as wines are pretty high yield wines. But they also, but they make really powerful wines. So you can have like easy drinking, fun ones. And what I like about this one is like it has like a little bit of like spritz to it. So it's like really refreshing. And it's not too fruity. It's more like on a mineral side. It has like a nice floral notes to it too. So it's just like really fun drinking wine. Where I usually see fun drinking wines tend to go like too heavy on the fruit side, so they all kind of get like too fruity and like too much in your face. Right. Where I think it's nicer to have a more subtle, easy drinking wine, which is like refreshing, and you just drink it. It's something that's a little bit more, just like a nice companion.
Exactly. No, I mean 11% alcohol in this one, but it's got that such like distinct like steely line of acidity through it. On the nose, it's floral. You get that a lot of fruit blossom on it, very, very floral nose. But then it's so dry and so lean that it's just really, really refreshing. I mean, mouth-watering, very not a juicy wine, but definitely one that kind of makes you salivate when you drink it because of that high acidity.
That's why you always have two in the fridge.
Because you're going to put them down pretty quickly.
Especially it's like low alcohol. I mean, it's like 11%, but most of my wines have pretty low alcohol, but especially this one, even like in the summer, if you want to have a spritz, like really hot days, it's also really fun if you add a little of sparkling water, add some mint leaves to it too, and you can add some, if you like elderberry syrup or something to make it almost like a long cocktail.
Or gin or vodka.
Pardon?
Or gin or vodka.
Oh yeah, maybe.
But yeah, elderberry syrup, but not like elderflower. Like Saint Germain would be, amazing with this. I think would just as a little liqueur to add in to give it that spritz.
I usually wouldn't add liqueur. I would just use like some of the aromatics from the elderberry, but
it's fun either way, and it's such a unique grape. So tell us a little bit about the Margarethenhof. Margarethenhof. You pronounce it.
Margarete is the flower, so you can see the flower on the bottle too, on the cap. It's like
okay. Yes. Nice.
So that's the Margarete. That's the name. That's why it's called Margarethenhof. Margarethenhof Hofes estate. Well, the house. And so Margarethenhof is the first winery I worked at when I was back in Germany. Doing winemaking studies in Germany, it's mandatory to do an internship at a winery, either in Germany or somewhere else. But for winemaking, you're technically supposed to take one or do one in Germany. So I met the winemaker at a small trade show somewhere in Cologne, where I grew up in the area, and I asked him if he knows someone where I could do an internship. And so he recommended me to come to the winery, meet the owners, and then see if I could work with them. And so that was, I think, in 2011, I think. So I went, introduced myself, and started working for them as an intern during the summer. So it's like, just like doing the whole growing season during the summer, and then I would make wine with them. And I've been living with them. It was like a really, really great time. It's like such an amazing, lovely family. So until today, I call them my family winery, even though it's not my family, but it feels like it. It's nice. So lovely, they're amazing people. And that was really like special to me too, when the wines got over here and I had like the wine cases in my hand, like a 6-packs. German wines come in 6-packs usually, and like in 12-packs. And I had like the wine with like the logo on it that I, made 10 years ago longer. And I was like, this is so cool. So that made me really, really happy. So Doro and Jürgen, who own the winery since like the 80s, did such an amazing job in building this beautiful community around the winery for this whole small village where they're located. And yeah, it's such a warm and loving environment. It's just really, really beautiful. And then Nico, at the time when I worked there, he was I think like 17 or something. And so he was like, he was around and he was interested in the whole winemaking thing, but his parents never put any pressure on him. They're like, you do what you want to do. You
Right.
go to school, you finish school, and then you can see if you want to, go into winemaking or, you choose. And so he actually ended up going to New Zealand as well. So he went to New Zealand for internship as well, like I did. And then came back and studied winemaking in Geisenheim as well, like I did. So he kind of like followed the footsteps of his parents without being pushed in any way. And
Sounds
then
like you followed in your footsteps.
maybe. Yeah, and then so he worked in Italy as well, and like other really good producers in Germany, and then he was in South Africa. But the pandemic started, so his parents called him like, you got to come home now, like we don't know what's going to happen. So he flew back home in early 2020, right after the outbreak, and he's been home since. So he actually took over the winemaking part and started his own imprint his own philosophy to the production side, and he's been doing an amazing job. It's been really, really great to see what he's been doing since, like how his wine's tasting, his new directions he's kind of going. So and it's all the techniques he learned in like working different parts of the world is like really, really cool. So
yeah, is he kind of looking to push the boundaries of German winemaking and maybe incorporate some of the varietals or techniques that he learned in those other areas? Or is he kind of returning back to his roots and sticking with, the indigenous grapes, the local style, so on and so forth?
He's definitely staying with the local grapes. He's definitely staying to the Pinot Noir, which is definitely a grape that grows well over there. His Riesling, he loves Elbling. He has all different sides of Elbling. And this winery actually has a lot of Sauvignon Blanc as well. They have some Pinot Blanc, some Pinot Gris, some Auxerrois, which is a great variety that comes over from France side more.
Huge fan.
So they already have like a really great range of different grape varieties that they work with.
Yeah.
And so for him, it's just interesting now to use different techniques to showcase different styles of all these grape varieties. So that's kind of where he's coming in now, like, doing different type of spontaneous fermentation or inoculation, some different fermentation vessels. So it's kind of like a different take on all different grape varieties to get more complexity to the wines.
Mm-hmm.
Just like playing with it and making outstanding wines. It was really great to taste with him. I went there last year to visit them, stayed with them for a few days and tasted with Nico. So yeah, it's been great.
Nice. And are they sustainable or organic in any way?
They're not certified, but yes, they own their own vineyards too. So they take a lot of good care of their own vineyards. They have their own vineyard workers too. They have the same crew that comes in twice a year. I'm at one time doing harvest and then once beginning of the year for all the pruning and stuff. So they've been working really closely with their own vineyards and their own land too. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, you've got to be really confident in your product if you're putting your name on the front label, like
I know.
Nico's.
Yes, I don't want to sell anything that I wouldn't drink. So. Well, I'm not getting any wines that I would not drink and stand behind. So that's me too. Yeah.
And it's a beautiful label design. You mentioned the Margarethe flower on the cap and then also on the label. But the two lines are those sort of are those the Mosel River, or is there?
Yeah, these are the two rivers where the winery is located. So the unique thing about this winery is that it's located between the Saar River and the Mosel River. Okay. So they have two terroirs. So it's one of the slogans too. On the back label it says ein Weingut, zwei Flüsse, zwei terroirs, ein Weingut. So two rivers, two terroirs, one winery. So that what this is pretty much all about. So all the Rieslings they produce are coming from the Saar River, which is really heavy slate-driven soils, really steep slopes as well. And then the other wines, all the other grape varieties they produce are coming from the Mosel area. So it's kind of, it's really cool to have like two different terroirs in like one small area.
And what's the Mosel like? It's less slate. Is it more calcareous? Is it more limestone? Is it clay?
Yeah, I mean, they still have a little of slate as well, but not as heavy. And then like a huge combination of them, and because it's like all riverbed too. A lot of I don't know what's called in English.
Calcareous soil that like
calcareous, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You live in Paso Robles, you live in North County, you know calcareous.
Yes, I do. It's like, yeah. Sometimes I blank on the English when I look at the German wine labels.
Your English is excellent, by the way. They taught you quite well in New Zealand.
Thank you. Yeah. It's been like 5 years that I'm here, so yes. I know I should speak English.
It's weird. This is, I don't want this to sound sexist, but I have found that foreign women who live in the United States for long periods of time, their accents do tend to fade. But for some reason, foreign men who live in the United States, like their accents stay as strong as the day they left their country. Like I don't know if it's a weird, like they're just won't give it up or whatnot, or it's some mating tool. But yes, the Frenchmen I know and the Germans, like they're still nearly unintelligible with their accents.
Okay. Well, I guess I have my more Kiwi accent still from living in New Zealand, but
I mean, at this point, you could be from like New Jersey. It's not too far. I'm kidding.
That's fine.
So let's talk food pairings with this Elbling because it's so unique, so floral. Give us your food pairings and then obviously your classic German food pairing with this too. Yes, Scott, mating tool. That's what I said.
Okay, for the German one, I would probably go for herring, the fish.
Mm-hmm. Of course we know.
So there's like this
as opposed to herring, the like, the necktie or herring.
I don't know what herring is the same word in English. But I guess
it is.
If you pronounce it English enough, herring. So there's one dish that comes with like a creamy white sauce and it has like some apple slices in it. And then what is it? Yeah. It has some onions, some apples, some pickled there's pickles in there as well, and then like the marinated fish, the herring. And this is like a really nice like summer dish as well. It usually comes it's like usually I think eaten in all the month and end of an hour, like it's like fish season, like September, October, November.
Yeah.
And so this is like definitely one of the pairings I like to do with this wine because I'm like on the fish today with my wines. But then also like a nice salad with like goat cheese as well. Like goat cheese works very well, feta cheeses, some grilled vegetables. So everything it's like more refreshing and summer dishes. I would totally go with that. Or like a nice cheese plate as well, something that you want to enjoy while snacking on something. Yeah,
absolutely. What about something like Spätzle? Would Spätzle go well with this?
I might be a little bit too heavy, too greasy, depending on what you eat with it. I think I'll probably go more for like the sparkling wine or a Riesling.
Okay.
If you want to have like a typical cheese Spätzle or something. Yeah.
Got it. I'm just going with like the 3 German dishes I know.
Oh. There you go.
So next one up will be Wiener Schnitzel.
It could work with the rosé, I'd say.
Yeah, that's true. You're jumping the gun. No, this is delightful and such a find and so interesting and just something that you'll never find here in the United States. Super rare. I mean, you're the
even
first
in Germany it's really rare. So yeah.
Is it? Yeah. You're the first distributor. I mean, who specializes in German wines who I've ever seen carrying an Elbling. So I'm very, very impressed with this wine and just love.
Thank you. Yeah.
It has
a really good sparkling wine too with the same grape. So that might be something I will add to my sparkling wine club too.
Yeah, I can see that with the aromatics on it. I think would just really make this pop, and then the dryness would be terrific. Yes, Stacy's loving it too. She says she's never heard of this grape, and it is fascinating. So you're winning people over.
And kraut, typical sauerkraut would probably as well with the Elbling. Yeah,
I like it. Excellent choice. All right, let's move on to the rosé. You mentioned the Mosel and then the Saar. This comes from the Saar, but I imagine a different portion of the Saar. Sorry, I couldn't wait. That's why my bottle is empty here. But this is the Petershof 2021 rosé, and this is now. It's interesting because I noticed, in your portfolio and everything, you're calling this Pinot Noir. Yes, it looks beautiful. Beautiful pink color. You're calling this Pinot Noir instead of Spatburgunder, which is the traditional name, the German name for Pinot Noir. Is that just for the American audience, or is that something that this winery has kind of decided we're going to call this Pinot Noir?
No, they call it Spatburgunder in Germany still. Okay. If you go further down south or even like Pfalz area, Baden area. They actually make Pinot Noir now. They call them Pinot Noir as well. And it's based on the style. So German Spätburgunder traditionally seems to be on the lighter side, like really light colored as well and everything. So those producers who started to make a more Burgundy style Pinot Noir chose the name Pinot Noir as well rather than Spätburgunder, just to go and give the consumer a better understanding of what style to expect when they buy these wines.
Right.
But usually everything I import now, I try to use the English name on it, at least on like one of the labels. So some of the wines that I have say Grauburgunder on the front and then Pinot Gris on the back. I'll do the same thing with the Pinot Noirs too. If the German label has Spätburgunder on it, then I would just stick to it for sure.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you're going to be consumer focused, you definitely want to give the consumer something they know and recognize, so they're not having to, look up a book and translate it for them.
Totally. Yeah, for my next shipment that comes in, I started to because I designed the back labels too, the import labels. So it's pretty much on me what I put on there. And so I started to add a few keywords that describe the wines. If it's, easy drinking or a single vineyard one, if it's barrel aged, kind of give you an idea when you look at the back label, what you're getting if you go to a store and see the wine somewhere.
Yeah, I think that's...
This one has a QR code now. So there's just 4 labels on the back. This is what I get ready for the producers too. Yeah.
No, I think that's smart. And you've got so many titles: exclusive wines, importer, wholesaler, online retailer. Like, what don't you do? Singer, dancer, actress, juggler,
None of the above. Just wine.
Nice. So tell us a little bit about Petershof and this producer from the store.
So Peter, he studied winemaking with me as well, same with like Jens, who made the first sparkling wine. Also, we'll get back to his red wine at the end to talk about him, I guess, too. But so Peter and then Jens studied winemaking with me, and then a few other of the winemakers in my portfolio. And Peter started working for this producer in the Saar region, where he is now located with own winery. And he always did a harvest in Germany and also in South Africa. So he's been doing this for the longest time. And then he kind of got to a point where he's like, well, I've done this for so many years now. I think I want to make my own wine. So he, in 2019, started to look into his own property where he could make wine. And he's been talking to local farmers in the area who own their own vineyards to see if he will be able to start farming the land and take care of the old vines that they have on his properties. And so he, at some point, decided to, go for it, like I did with my business too. He's like, I got to do it now or never. Yep. So he, went to the bank, got some money. He bought this really cool old cow stable, like pretty much like an old farmhouse, and completely refurbished it step by step, put the press in there, new floors in it and everything, just make it like a whole, legit small winery. Yeah. And then he was able to, contract those vineyards, so you could work with the vineyards and get grapes. And what I think is really special too, if you're a young producer, that you're able to work with older vineyards. So for him, he doesn't have to, sometimes you just have to go and plant your own vines, and it takes up to 5 years that you're actually able to make wines out of them. And then it takes another 5, 10, 20 years to actually produce high-end wines. So for him, the people in the area were actually really, really happy that he was interested in taking care of his old vines, because they had no children or grandchildren who wanted to look into this. And
it's a common problem everywhere. I know we're dealing with that here in North County right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So he started working with those old vines. So I think this one might be like 50-year-old vines. Some of the Rieslings he has are like 60, 70-year-old vines. So really concentrated grapes and really high quality vineyards that he's working with, what I think is really cool. And you can definitely taste it as well. Like these wines are just, has so much tension and so much complexity, but at the same time, it's like really linear and structured at the same time. Like it's really interesting winery. So I'm really happy that I can work with him as well. In addition to Margarethenhof. Again, technically same region. So this is Saar, the other one is Saar and Mosel. So they're really close to each other, like maybe like a 30-minute drive. But then this is so different, like so different brands, that I'm totally happy to have both of them. So to answer your question from earlier again.
That's okay. Answering questions from earlier is always good.
And then so this one, the Pinot Noir it's a 2021 vintage. What I kind of was hesitant to import because many retailers talk to me like, oh yeah, I'm still sitting on my 2021 rosés. And I was like, actually, I'm getting some right now because I think it tastes great right now. And for me, the vintage is one thing, but it's more about the taste and how the wine is showing right now.
Right.
Even rosés can age really well if it's, you know, a well-made wine. And if it's a wine made, and it's actually made for aging as well. So it depends on the style, how you make the wine, what the winemaker's intentions were. And so for this one, it definitely has like a darker color too. Yeah, really dark rosé.
Yeah.
So what he did on this one, 2021 was a cooler vintage, and he decided to kind of wait a little bit longer with that point of harvesting it. And then when he harvested the grapes, he harvested them all at once. But 30% of the ones he harvested, he made like a red wine. So he fermented them on skins for like full 2 weeks and then aged them in neutral oak vessels. They usually have like a certain type of they call it fooder. It's like a puncheon size, technically, like really heavy.
So,
oak.
bigger than the traditional.
Yeah, it's 115 gallons. So like, usually, and 30 depending on the cooperage. So that was like 30% made like a red wine, and then 70% were pressed off immediately and aged in stainless, and then he made a blend afterwards. So it's technically a cuvee of 2 different Pinot Noir styles made into a rosé. So this is why I think it's a really, like, I think it's great. It's like a really complex rosé. You can drink it, you know, nicely chilled on a hot day, but also, again, a food pairing wine. If you have like a great burger with like some blue cheese as well, would totally work. So I would do probably like a nice burger.
Yeah, no, a blue cheeseburger with this would be phenomenal. And what's interesting about it is it's so floral on the nose. I mean, you know, I'm used to certain aromas with Pinot Noir, even with Pinot Noir rosé. You find it tends to be light, super like rose petal soft. This one to me has, you know, there's some green notes. There's a real strong rose, but like a really intense rose note to it. It's very unique in that. And I suspect part of that is that blend of the Sanye and the direct press style being put together.
There's no Sanye in it.
Oh, okay.
No. It's like, so the 30% are actually made in a red wine style.
Oh, okay. So it's an actual red wine.
He just pressed off immediately. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. So it's a full macerated red wine that he blends in with the free red. Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah. So the wineries I work with, they don't do any Sanye for the rosés.
Okay. Yeah.
No, they don't have to. It's not like as hot as it's over here that you would, kind of do Sanye to make a different style of red wine. So no, this is just actually harvested at the same time, like one block of Pinot Noir, and then made it 2 different styles, and then blended back together afterwards.
Got it.
Yeah.
I feel your pain. I mean, one of my best bargains that I always tell people is to find off-year rosés, because rosé has become such a, if it's not the most recent vintage, I'm not going to drink it. I'm not going to sell it. I'm going to get rid of it. So you can get fantastic bargains on year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-old rosés that hold up, because they're produced so well, still drink great, but nobody wants a 2-year-old rosé, a 3-year-old rosé, it feels like, from the retailer side.
Yeah, I actually have, from my Baden producer, Bettina Schumann, who makes us outstanding Pinot Noirs. She also makes Pinot Gris, and then her rosé only comes in Magnum bottles with a full gold wax capsule over it. And her rosé, it's like a 2019 vintage right now. She only bottles this type of rosé in Magnum bottles because she believes and thinks it's like the only way for this rosé to show its full potential. And I had one just a couple of weeks ago, and it's just outstanding wine. Like for a rosé, it's just one of the best rosés I think I've ever had. Only comes in Magnum, but it's kind of cool too.
Yeah, I mean, Magnums are tough to store, but it's always nice to have around.
They're actually the same height as the other ones. So
they're just a little wider. It's the problem.
Yeah, so she chose like one of the really big, big belly rosé bottles, which looks like a burgundy bottle rosé. So
it's like the cool. Foster's can of wine, basically.
But it's like beautiful, and it's such a cool wine.
Nice.
This
is a good nice. This is a good point to ask about. I've noticed, not the sparkling, obviously, but the other three wines are all Stelvin caps, screw caps. And I have noticed a lot of German wines have been moving in that direction. Is that kind of a national trend? Is that something that's being dictated by the regulations, or is it just that Germans have discovered that, like, with their style of wines, screw caps make a better presentation?
It mainly depends on the price point you're working with, and you're looking at most wineries have screw caps for the easy drinking wines, for the ones that you sell to restaurants and by the glass service, just because it's easier. You could open and close it, and then even at home, easier to store a wine with a screw cap and put it back in the fridge rather than having a corked bottle.
Yeah.
But then for the most part, the high-end wines and high-end producers still choose natural cork.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Like the one that I talked to last week as well. All of the high-end wines will all be cork, like fresh, like natural cork. Yeah.
Got it. Nice. But yeah, this is a delicious rosé. It's got a lot of depth to it. It's drier than I think most people would be used to. It doesn't have, it has fruitiness, but it's not an overpowering fruitiness. It's there's more of a leanness to it. So, yeah, you mentioned the blue cheeseburger with this. What is your traditional German pairing with this? And I know I'm being a brat by putting you on the spot with this.
The Wiener Schnitzel, now that you said it earlier. I think that would totally work. And then also with like Thanksgiving coming up now, yes. I think that one would work really well too. If you like red wine usually, but which doesn't usually pair that well with turkey and the gravy. This one totally works of this acidity and the structure as well. Would go really well with like some greasiness too. Or yeah, other high acid wines I think would work pretty well too. With like
totally agree. I'm a major proponent of rosé wines with Thanksgiving dinner. It's just such a natural pairing that makes so much sense with what you're eating during that meal.
Totally. And then German food wise, I guess
you're really German in accent at this point. I feel like you're a California girl who just happens to speak German.
Still my first.
I've seen your surfboards.
Right. Yeah. I think so. What I like a lot is like definitely a German thing. All those pate styles, like pate, liver, sausages, all these things. So a typical German dinner usually is like a heavy rye bread and then a little bit of butter, and then you have like all those pates and spreads and stuff.
Yes.
And I think, or like even like that's something probably I would have with this wine. Just I think it would be really yummy. And then also I posted a recipe on my website as well just a few weeks ago with my wine club release. It's a German dish called Reibekuchen. And Reibekuchen are just like potato pancakes. But you grind potatoes and you also grind the onions.
Oh.
And then you have them like really small, like, mix them up together. You add a little bit of flour, a little bit of egg, and then you fry them nice and crispy in a pan. You can either eat them on its own with like some smoked salmon and some cream cheese and like some chives and green onions. Or you can also use it's like a side dish for like a heavier roast or something too. It's like a really yummy potato dish. And that I think would work too with like smoked salmon and those Reibekuchen dishes. Yep.
So latkes. Basically you're making latkes, which is great.
Maybe.
Yeah. Beautiful. Stacy says from the color you would assume this is a heavier and sweeter rosé, but it's a pleasant surprise and also delicious. So 3 for 3 on Stacy's palate, which is great. So thank you, Stacy.
Thank you, Stacy.
Beautiful. All right, last but not least, we go back to Werther Windisch and their Portugieser, which is such a unique grape. Again, we had the Elbling, which is something that very few people have had, and I think Portugieser same way. A grape that not actually from Portugal, which is, kind of, I think people are thrown by that. Truly an indigenous German grape. You don't really find this grown anywhere else. It doesn't have a French name or an Italian name, as far as I know. It's not like how, Trollinger is Schiava and in Italy. Thank you for holding up the bottle. I appreciate that. So yeah, take us through this wine. So interesting.
Yeah. So Portugieser is a grape variety that's mostly planted these days in Rheinhessen, where Jens Wine is located.
Yes.
A little bit of Pfalz as well, and then you find a little bit down in Austria as well. And then if you look up tasting notes for Portugieser, it's usually described as like it's really cherry, easy drinking, almost like a carbonic style red wine. So something that you would not expect too much, something that you would just put in a fridge as well, chill it down and enjoy. And so in 2016, the vintage looked that great that Jens decided to actually make a legit Portugieser. So he had some French oak barrels. He went like the full thing, like full maceration on skin, fermentation on skin for a couple of weeks, and then aged it in French oak for several years as well. And so when I tasted this wine, it's just like, this is such a cool wine. And if you see, so the label, it says as well in English on the back, in German on the front, 8 degrees, 8 Grad, 14 Minuten.
Yes.
And so that means 8 degrees and 14 minutes, which is like the longitude, latitude of the location where the vineyard or like the village is located, where the wine is from. So this is a second tier wine that he makes. So the estate wines usually have an orange label, and then the white one is like the village one, and then he has the black ones for the single vineyard ones.
Okay.
Like the sparkling wine has like the black one.
I like the little baseball cap or whatever cap that is on the top of his label.
It was actually the very first label that he came up with, and I remember sitting in class with him. We probably should have listened to what the teacher was telling us, but we were sitting in class with him, and we were going through all like this different logo options. So the first label design and logo that he came up with, we were sitting in class together making decisions on it. So that was really cool. So
does the cap have some symbolism? Was it something he wore as a kid, or is it like indigenous, like German youths wear that at their, boarding schools or whatnot?
Maybe. I wouldn't know. No, he just likes wearing baseball hats or like caps. Yeah, he's a cool style.
He's like a Dortmund fan. I don't know.
No.
Okay. I don't know what the team around there is.
Probably Eintracht Frankfurt, but
Frankfurt, nice. Yes.
Maybe, yeah, I don't know though. So yeah, actually he's getting new labels. So my next shipment that I get in from him has his new labels on it. So I'm really excited to have them over here too. But so yeah, this was his 2016 vintage, and it's a village one, so it's like second tier wine. And he decided to make this really powerful, still elegant Portugieser, powerful for Portugieser. It's not a heavy, Napa cap or anything. It's still after all Portugieser, but made in like a really high quality style with like really high quality grapes to start with. I mean, really good warmer vintage. And then, the French oak influence too. And I think this wine I sold quite a lot to one of my favorite pizza places here in Slough too, Bear the Ren.
I can see that.
It's a really cool pizza. So this is like a really good, I think, pizza wine, but on like a, away from Sangiovese, something different.
Right.
You have like this hint of like green, almost like a Cab Franc aromatics on the nose, but I think it's really cool.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's, to me, this is a wine where more so than a lot of other wines I've had, you can really pick up the oakiness of this. Like you get, like, I think because of the lightness of the Portugieser grape, the oak really stands out. You get a little bit of that vanilla and that tannin. In a way, it reminds me a bit of like some of the Beaujolais Cru, because that's a lighter wine that's, aged for a longer period of time in oak barrels, and it really shines through, but adds such a complexity and a richness to this red wine. It's one that you pour it and you look at the lightness of the color and you think, oh, this is going to be light, easy drinking, and then it enters your mouth and you're just like, wow, okay, this is so complex.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think again, what we had on all these wines too, like a tension on the palate, like it's like you want to have more of it. It gives you like this, it's like smooth at the same time. It's like not bitter or anything. It goes down really easily, but at the same time wants you to get more of it too.
That the high acidity, really triggers the saliva glands and makes it very mouth watering, which you're right, like makes you want to,
tasting acidic. It's more like this, like subtle impression of like, oh, I think I want more of that.
Exactly. It's like, it's cherry, but it's like a burnt cherry, like a darker, it's got, and you taste that bitterness and it's just complex and super interesting.
And it's like aged so perfectly now too. I mean, it's 2016 vintage, so it's like 7 years now, and it's like a $30-something bottle of wine. So it's nothing, crazy.
It's shocking. So I mean, is Portugieser a grape that's typically aged that long, or is this really kind of an outlier in terms of
definitely a unique wine and an outlier for what it is? I haven't seen many even living in Germany for that long. And then, as I said earlier, a typical wine descriptive for this wine would be more, easy drinking cherry, Beaujolais style wines.
Yeah, nice. Is it a common grape? I mean, again, it's one that I had only heard of and hadn't really tasted, and I've tasted a lot of grapes, so I'm really, I'm so excited to be able to consume it. But is it something that's fairly common in Germany in this portion of the Rheinhessen?
I'd say so. Quite a few probably have some of it, but it's not really like a famous wine you would find in a lot of like wine shops and stuff. So it's definitely more like a, like a unique gem you find every now and then.
Yeah. It's delicious. All right. German wine pairing with this one.
So I do like beef carpaccio a lot, and so I usually have either Pinot Noir with it or a Chianti, or
the traditional German carpaccio.
I don't know if there's a German carpaccio. Just something in a German life.
That's the point. Yes.
And then probably I would go for something that's unique, like food-wise as well, for the Frankfurt area. What is it? So it's like Tafelspitz. It's like a slow cooked. I think it's veal. My dad would probably hit me now because
yeah, you can't say veal.
You should know better.
I can't say that word around my house.
So it's something like really nice, like slow cooked meat. Probably I would probably go for it. Or you can have like Sauermagen, which is similar to I think definitely a meat dish. As I said earlier, I do love pizza with this wine as well.
Yeah.
And what I try to do as well with my wines in my online shop, I have categories for different occasions. So if you kind of like, this is what being like more like I'm at home watching a rom-com and a Netflix wine, and then, or, like a date night wine might be more like a sparkling wine. So kind of try to organize wines more by when I would open them to make it a little bit easier to understand the style that a wine brings. Because as again, German wine labels and varieties I never heard of. It's sometimes nice to just get an idea what to do with the wine or the occasion you could pair it with. And
to me, this is like a perfect outdoor summer or early fall barbecue wine. Like
bonfire at the beach or something, or picnic, camping.
Invite your neighbors over to the backyard and open up a few bottles to pair with the burgers or ribs or steaks or whatever you're throwing on the grill.
I like a nice charcuterie board too, some of them.
Yeah, well, and living in the Central Coast, I mean, Santa Maria tri-tip is a big thing around here. And to me, this is a perfect wine because it's such a tough, fattier cut that needs a little more time. Having that high acidity with this, I think would be just, and a little bit of smoke. Like, I think it's a perfect pairing with this.
Yeah, that would work. He has some ribs too, short ribs. Yeah.
So go take this to like the rib line and all the tri-tip producers in town and say, this is the wine to pair with your.
I got the wine for you.
Exactly. Excellent.
Absolutely.
Well, it's nearly 8:00, so we'll kind of wrap things up here. So first and foremost, before we open it up to any questions, as you mentioned, you sell all your wines. You not only import them, but you sell them direct to consumer. You have a wine club. You have several wine clubs, it sounds like. So what's the best way for people to find out about what wines you've got, to buy wines, to get in touch with you? How can folks do that?
So definitely through our website. All the info is on our website. You can always give me a call. I'm always on my phone.
What is your website, Lisa? By the way.
Tupetz Wine. So my last name is Tupetz, and then tupetzwine.com.
Not one pet, but two pets.
Two pets, yeah. Pretty much. And so I have my wine club on there. I do have my traditional wine club, which is the one that I chip out every quarter. And then I choose the wines based on the season, also based on how they taste. So I have wines in the cellar that I haven't sold yet because I think they need to age longer. So I'm kind of making a decision usually on like how I think the wines are showing right now. And then so you can buy them, in my online shop too, but usually the wine club is like the way I think to go, because I make the selections, but you can also change the wines out. So if you don't like the wines that I chose, you can switch out the wines. You can also skip a shipment if you have too much wine in your fridge already. Or, that's the thing. And then, so that's like one of my traditional wine club, which I think is like a really interesting introduction to the German wine world. And so one of the things I kind of came up with recently, because of one of the wine shops I wanted to work with over in Bakersfield, he asked me about the wines I'm importing. He's like, so it looks like the wines you're importing are actually the ones that Germans are drinking. And I was like, oh, yeah, absolutely. Like I buy wines that the German wineries are producing for the German market anyway. So I'm not asking them to make wines specifically for the American market to please a certain consumer palate, like sweet Rieslings or anything.
Right.
And so that's something I never really thought about.
Did you say straight Rieslings or street Rieslings? Because I love the idea of street Rieslings. Like, hey, this is a Riesling. It's only, you can only get on the street.
Really cool one.
Right, yeah, exactly.
No, a sweet one, obviously.
Oh, sweet Rieslings.
Like pleasing like the stereotype of German wine should taste like.
Yes.
So the wines that I import are actually the ones that I would drink in Germany. So my slogan is drink like a German, because the wines I'm getting over here are the ones that we would drink in Germany too.
Although if you could label a wine as a street Riesling, I would absolutely buy that wine.
Street Riesling?
Street Riesling to go with like street tacos, like done and done.
I'll let you know next year. You can join the wine club.
Let's make it happen.
I mean, members only selection. So that's something as well. For example, with my next wine club shipment, I'm getting only 48 bottles of this 2014 sparkling wine in from this producer, like a new producer I'm working with, like my #1 sparkling wine houses in Germany. And there are only 48 bottles left of this, really cool Cuvee, and it's like a strong reserve Cuvee, and just got 96 Parker points too.
Oh, so wow.
Such an amazing sparkling wine. I mean, it's expensive, but not for American standard, but for German standard, it's really expensive.
Right.
But it's an amazing sparkling wine, and I'm really excited to have it. But yeah, so that's like a wine that only goes into my wine club. So that's why being a wine club member, if you want some unique wines that you don't see anywhere else, that's definitely the place where I will sneak them in to my wine club shipments.
And just so you know, like, I have a hard and fast rule to not let other wine clubs talk about their wine clubs to my wine club members, but I'm making an exception this one time for you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. You might get a bottle then.
only buy direct from Lisa. Do not join her club. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, never mind.
No, never mind. I want a bottle of that a 2014.
Yeah, no, that's like, really cool too. And then the sparkling wine club as well. But anytime if you have questions, I also make like a 6-pack right now that it's more like a get to know German wine package, where I make a 6-pack ready, like a one-time thing with like a good price on it, just to get an idea about German wines, to see if you like them. So much today, just to taste different varieties, different styles, to see if you actually enjoy German wines before committing to a club or anything.
And are you able, like for the wines we had tonight, are you, planning on bringing in the next vintage of these? Is these kind of staples, or are you switching things up on a obviously?
So
it's based on what sells, I imagine.
Yeah, totally. So the 2016 Portugieser is not made in this style anymore. So it actually has like now a style of Pinot Noir and Portugieser. So I got to taste it next year when I'm in Germany and see if that would work still same way. So that's like the last bottles that are available in the market, just anywhere. I bought the last few bottles a few months ago and I was like, I need all of them, they're great. The rosé, I'm still in the same vintage. They're getting more of it now too, just for the Thanksgiving. I think will be a great wine to have, the rosé.
Absolutely.
And then 2016 Silvaner is like the current vintage as of now. The 2017 won't be released for at least another year or two. And then the Elbling is current as well. So yeah.
But those are ones like the sparkling and the Elbling are definitely ones.
2021. No, 2022 will be the next shipment. Yeah.
But you're gonna continually bring those in. They're popular.
Yeah, these wines are definitely wines that I like to sell. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. At this point, if everybody wants to unmute themselves, if you have any questions for Lisa, you can go ahead and ask them, or, heap praise upon her. That's always fun too.
Yeah, thank you all for joining and listening, tasting with me.
Yeah. It's a small crowd, but I think we'll get a lot of people on the who will watch this on YouTube. So yeah, your knowledge will be passed on. Thank
you. Have you had German wines before? Maybe I can ask you this. Did you enjoy the wines? It looked like you did.
Yeah, I'll jump in. These wines were fantastic. Like I've had a couple of German wines, like the Blaufränkisch and like one or two others, but
yeah,
all of these were really, really good.
Thank you.
I know I typed a question. How often, I have a couple questions, but how often do you go back and taste or, explore and check everything out?
Yeah, usually once a year. So 21, I went 22 and this year as well. This year was a shorter trip. So instead of going and visit all the wineries this year, I just went to the trade show where all the producers were around. So I could just taste with them and meet with them. That was kind of easy and also fun, but I also prefer to go to the winery to taste some more of the older vintages, taste of the new wines from the barrel and talk more about it, go to the vineyards again and see what's happening out there. So usually I do like a full trip and drive around Germany, get a rental car, and then, because they're good friends of mine too, and it's like always interesting to see, what's new and what new they came up with wine-wise. So, but once a year, it's like when I go over there, and then in between, like right now, I have 2 producers who want to work with me. So they will send me samples right now so I can taste them now to get an idea if it's worth it for me to pursue and actually go back and taste them. And then I will add them to my trip next year.
Yeah. Because that's got to be hard because you want to go back and, like you said, the trade shows, it's more accessible and easy to try a lot. Yeah. Then you're missing that experience, like you said, of, traveling and being there in the vineyard with the winemaker. It's 2 totally different experiences, but like serving different purposes, but at the same time, what you're looking to accomplish. It's
yeah.
So
I do prefer to go to the wineries for sure. And it gives me a better understanding too about, what they're working on. And trade show is so busy. It's usually more for me networking thing and just, show up and meet everyone and, spend time with them and see them and show them that I care as well. So it's more about, how like the partnership works for us too. But then it's just like way more fun for all of us if I just go to the winery and we have more time together. We can have dinner together, taste some other wines and just catch up too. Because I know them for so long now that it's just nice. And even like the newer ones that I just started recently working with that I met over the last few years, even then they became friends too. So it's always nice to have a little bit more time with the partners because I also rely on them to work with me. So if I have questions, if I need more wine information, if I need pictures from them, if I want them to share on social media certain things, so if I want them to join for a Zoom tasting, so I want them to know that I do everything I can, but I also need them to do some of to support me as well if I want to get some more info from them. And
it's a
have you noticed that
relationship.
Oh, sorry, Chris.
I just said it's a symbiotic relationship where the wineries need you need them, and you guys need to, kind of meet each other.
I don't want it to be like an anonymous import business. I don't want to be just someone who buys wines and sells them somewhere over here. I want the wineries to know how I'm doing, how the sales are going. They kind of know obviously if I buy more wine or not, but at the same time, I want them to see where my outlets, where my wines are going to, who's buying the wines, and how I see like certain developments, and if I maybe want to try something new with them. And so, that's what I want to do. I have like a real relationship to these wineries rather than just buying some wines that I don't know what to talk about, because then I wouldn't sell them and I wouldn't buy them either if someone's like, it's great, taste it, but then not with like no background information. So I want to know what's in the bottle with like so many things. I think it's important these days to question a little bit more where things are coming from, and not just blindly believe and think it must be good because it's somewhere in the grocery store on a shelf or something.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a different, you can tell like the passion and the caring like really comes through with things like that. Have you noticed a change like since you've been doing this as far as like what with the Americans, the palate as far as like Riesling, like what people look for? Are they willing to more, try other things, or is it like they're looking for, basically like have they grown or changed, or what you've seen that you distribute or what people are buying from you versus when you first started? Has there been changes? And
so at the beginning, it was interesting to see that wine club members would switch out their wine shipments quite a lot. So there were always quite a few people who would change wines to the more common grape varieties and more red wine heavy too. And now it kind of shifted to actually putting more white wines in it, and then getting more of the sparkling wines too. So kind of, you know, after exploring now for a year what type of wines they like, they're kind of now switching out certain wines and ordering more in between as well, and just getting some wines for, you know, the day-to-day drinking as well. So yeah, it's definitely interesting to shift from thinking that they only like red wines to actually white wines are amazing. So yeah.
Nice.
Yeah,
Scott,
that Elbling grape was just fascinating. Like so aromatic on like the nose, and like you said, like the sweet and the floral, and then you try it and it's like it's got like it's austere, it's kind of, you know, it's got acidity, it's, you know, it's kind of crisp, but you know, and at 11% alcohol, you're right, you're going to sit outside all day and, you know, drink that at 100%. But yeah, it was really unique. Same with the rosé.
Yeah.
Yeah, same with the rosé. I first saw it, and because we drank, you know, a ton of, you know, like typical French, you know, Provence style rosé, just, you know, it's like pale pink. And so usually you see a bottle like that, and it's, you know, it's Spanish, it's, you know, I haven't seen, you know, a French one, but like, okay, here comes the like the heavy, thick, kind of a little syrupy. And, you know, this was really nice. Also had like some floral, but still like a little acidity and really nice. And then the Portugueser, I mean, all the grapes were fantastic. And my wife took the bottle of the champagne. I was like, here, try this. And, you know, she's doing homework duty with our son and taste. And she's like, oh, this is good. I was like, she goes, can I just take it? I said, yeah, can you put the bottle back in the fridge? I'll let you have it. And she just took the glass and the bottle. So
I was going to say, it's going to be empty. It will not be back
100%. Yeah. And she's
Christine deserves it. She works hard, Stacey.
100%. She does. Yes. And so, and she's like, with the rosé, like I'm excited to have her try it. And they're really, really unique. So I thank you for doing this tonight with us. It's been really interesting, and we'll be going online and ordering some more. And we have other friends that are usually with us tonight and they couldn't make it. So they're going to be very jealous. And I'm trying to hold on to the wine to let them try it, but we're just going to have to buy more because we're not going to save it. We want to keep drinking it ourselves. So we'll have to order more. So.
They know where to get it. And if they need me to drive it down in November when I'm, you know, dropping off wines, they can do that.
Exactly. But, so yes, we will be. So thank you so much, Lisa. This is, Lisa, this is fantastic. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your feedback. That's great.
Scott, who's being shy, had a question about the bottle shape, because he noticed, which I think is correct, that most German wines, especially these, come in the traditional Hock shaped bottles rather than the, you know, Bordeaux or even the Burgundy style. So is there a reason for that, or?
I don't know the reason. I'd say it's the German tradition.
Okay.
That's probably the reason, the tradition. Because all of them come in the same bottle shape, except for Pinot Noir, they come in a Burgundy ones.
Right. But yeah, even like the Portuguese are, and I suspect that the other red Germans like the Lemberger and the Trollinger and whatnot seem to come in those bottles too, right?
Yeah, so Lemberger, depending on the quality, like the barrel aged ones, the reserve ones, usually go into the Burgundy ones too, Burgundy bottles, like the typical Pinot Noir bottles, and then the other ones, for the most part, in the typical Schlägerflasche. Yeah. So there you go,
Scott.
Pardon?
I said, there you go, Scott.
Yeah.
Nice. He says thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for joining, Scott.
Yes. All right. Any other questions? If not, then I think we'll wrap things up. Lisa, thank you so much for being here. This was great. Once again, if you're interested in grabbing Lisa's wines, joining any of her wine clubs, secondarily to the Forgotten Grapes Wine Club, of course, you can check it out at Tupetz, Tupetz wine, WINE, just wine, right? Not wines.
Tupetz wine.
If you have wines, you should buy wines too, just to be on the safe side. Tupetzwine.com. Or tomorrow when I send out the email with the replay, I will include Lisa's email on that as well, so you can contact her directly if you want to take anything home. But thank you so much. This was awesome. These wines were amazing. I think for our first international wine tasting, we really blew it out of the park. So
we can do it again one day. Different
I think we will. I definitely think we will.
I was gonna say, Chris, and I see like I'm on your website, and there's a ton of others. You have so many more that are just really interesting. And
believe me, I tried to get a Trollinger from her and I could not. So that'll be next time. We'll do some Trollinger.
I will
Yeah,
get some
really
more.
exciting.
And if you want to do virtual tastings with me, that's always an option too. So if anyone wants to do an event like this with like, friends and family or something like that.
She's
Yeah.
building a business, folks.
Oh.
Take advantage now because you're getting a lot of free labor from her.
Very cool. Yes, I might hit you up on that. We have a school event coming up that we have to sponsor certain things, so I
Yeah.
might hit you up on that as a fun. We've got some other parents that are big wine
Yeah.
fans. So
You're going to be
This
an
would be a really
auction
cool-
item, Lisa.
I know. It's like, when you reach out to me, let me know that you met me through Chris so I can give
oh
you
yeah,
this.
for sure. Yeah,
Beautiful.
absolutely. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
All right. And last but not least, keep an eye out next week for our email for the next the November wine shipment. We are going back to basics. We're going to be focusing on some big red wines from right here in Paso Robles. A fun winery, a fairly new winery here in Paso Robles called Boutz Cellars, Boutz Cellars, which is short for the Boutzarkas family, Greek family here that owns some vineyards in the Adelaide district, sells their grapes to a few fairly well-known producers, but also makes their own wine. Oddly, in the same place that I happen to make my sparkling wine as well. So I have run into James and his son Manoli quite a few times. Really, really fun guys. Great big red wines. We're getting back to Cabernets, Zinfandels, things like that. So perfect for the late fall, early winter wines that we'll be jumping on. So keep an eye out for that email. But for now, thank you so much for being here, Lisa. We appreciate it. And good night, everybody. Thank you for being here. Good night.
Nice
See you
to meet
next month.
all. Have a good
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Good night.